Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. The Houston airport terminal buzzed with the usual commotion, announcements echoing overhead, suitcases rolling past, and hurried footsteps filling the space. Helen Martinez, dressed impeccably in her Chanel suit and Christian Louboutin heels, checked her Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. Her patience was wearing thin. The flight to Boston had already been delayed by 30 minutes. Finally, boarding began. Helen's first-class ticket should have guaranteed her a smooth and peaceful journey. However, as she settled into her window seat, she noticed a young man in military fatigues approaching her row. Her manicured fingers tightened around her leather handbag. "Excuse me, ma'am," the soldier said politely. "I believe I'm in 2B. Helen barely suppressed an eye roll. Another soldier, probably expecting special treatment just for wearing a uniform. She'd seen it so many times, the priority boarding, the constant thank you for your service, the hero worship that seemed to follow them everywhere. The soldier, whose name tag read Walker S., stowed his worn duffel bag in the overhead compartment and eased into his seat, moving a bit stiffly as if favoring one side. "I suppose you got some kind of military discount for the seat," Helen remarked, her tone sharp with disdain. Sam Walker turned slightly, his expression neutral. "No, ma'am. Full fare." Helen raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Really? Usually, your kind expects everything handed to them on a silver platter. Special treatment everywhere you go." A slight tension appeared in Sam's jaw, but his voice remained steady. "I assure you, ma'am, I'm not expecting any special treatment." "Oh, please," Helen scoffed, warming to her irritation. "I see it all the time. Everyone falling all over themselves to thank you, offering discounts, upgrades, special privileges, as if putting on a uniform automatically makes you a hero." A few passengers nearby cast disapproving glances in her direction, but Helen ignored them. Sam remained silent, pulling a worn photograph from his breast pocket. His gaze lingered on it with such quiet intensity that it only fueled Helen's annoyance. "What's that? A staged photo op with some poor foreign children?" she sneered. Sam's fingers tightened around the photo's edges, but his voice remained calm. "No, ma'am. This is my daughter, Sarah. She's 6. Helen rolled her eyes. "Oh, how convenient. Playing the family man card now. Let me guess. You're off on some noble mission to save the world while leaving her behind?" A flight attendant's announcement about takeoff procedures offered a brief pause in the tension. Sam carefully tucked the photograph back into his pocket while Helen made a show of checking her emails one last time before switching to airplane mode. "Actually," Sam said quietly once they were airborne, "I'm heading to Boston Children's Hospital. Sarah has a rare form of leukemia." Helen let out an exaggerated sigh. "Of course she does. And let me guess, you're hoping someone overhears and starts a GoFundMe for you? That's how it works these days, isn't it? Military families playing the sympathy card." A woman across the aisle gasped at Helen's callousness, but Sam's expression didn't change. He reached for the in-flight magazine, his hands trembling slightly. Though whether from anger or emotion, Helen couldn't tell. "The military's healthcare should cover that anyway," Helen continued, unable to stop herself. "More special treatment." Sam's voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, I understand you have strong feelings about the military, but my daughter's condition is real, and it's serious. The treatment she needs is experimental. That's why we're going to Boston." Helen noticed a faint scar along his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. Probably from some training accident, she thought dismissively. She had read about how much money was wasted on military exercises. A flight attendant arrived with the drink cart, smiling warmly at Sam. "Thank you for your service," she said, offering him a complimentary drink. Helen smirked. "See, special treatment. Just like I said." Sam shook his head. "No, thank you. Just water, please. And I'll pay for it." The 4-hour flight continued in tense silence. Helen buried herself in work documents, occasionally stealing sideways glances at the soldier. She noticed he kept checking his phone whenever allowed, his expression growing more concerned each time. During a bout of turbulence, the plane jolted, and Sam winced. His sleeve rode up slightly, revealing deep scars along his wrist. "Combat injury?" Helen asked, more sarcastic than curious. "IED in Kandahar," he replied simply. 2 years ago. Lost 3 members of my unit. That day." "Well, that's what happens when you sign up to play war," Helen retorted, though her voice carried a little less venom than before. Sam turned to fully face her for the first time, and Helen noticed the weight in his gaze, something she hadn't seen before. "Ma'am, I don't know what experiences have led you to despise the military so much, but I can assure you, none of us are playing. Boston Logan International Airport was bathed in the soft glow of early evening as they landed. Helen gathered her belongings slowly, deliberately taking her time to avoid walking alongside Sam through the terminal. As she made her way to baggage claim, she overheard his voice on the phone, strained, weary. "Yes, I'm here. No, the last treatment didn't. Please, just keep her comfortable until I get there." "Yes, I know visiting hours are almost over, but I'm her father." Helen shook her head, still convinced it was all an act. She collected her designer suitcase and made her way to the taxi stand, pushing the entire encounter from her mind. She had more important things to focus on, namely, the pharmaceutical conference she was attending as a senior sales representative. Later that evening, in her luxurious hotel suite at the Four Seasons, she sipped an expensive glass of Cabernet while scrolling through her social media feed. A shared post from a local Boston news station caught her eye. As she read the headline, her wine glass nearly slipped from her fingers. "Local hero, battle-decorated soldier fights a new war for his daughter's life." On her screen was a photo of Sam Walker, but not in the way she had expected. The image showed him in a hospital room, holding a frail little girl with no hair. Despite the tubes and monitors surrounding her, the child's smile was radiant. Helen's hands trembled as she read on. Staff Sergeant Samuel Walker, recipient of the Purple Heart and Bronze Star for Valor in Afghanistan, now faces a different kind of battle. His 6-year-old daughter, Sarah, has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of acute myeloid leukemia, resistant to conventional treatments. Despite still recovering from severe combat injuries, Walker has been working multiple jobs in addition to his military duties to fund experimental treatments not covered by military insurance. His unit has been raising funds, but the cost of treatment at Boston Children's Hospital remains a significant burden. "I promised her mother before she passed that I would always protect Sarah," Walker said. "In combat, you have weapons, training, and your brothers beside you. But fighting cancer, you feel helpless. All I can do is be here and try to give her a chance." Helen could read no further, her vision blurred with tears. Every sharp remark she had made on the plane, every dismissive glance, every cold assumption replayed in her mind. The photo haunted her. Sam, clearly in pain from his own injuries, yet smiling for his daughter's sake as he held her close. She now realized it was the same photo he had tried to show her on the plane. With shaking hands, she reached for her laptop and searched for more information. She found a fundraising page created by Sam's unit, detailing not only Sarah's battle but his own. The IED explosion had left him with severe internal injuries and PTSD, yet he refused a medical discharge. His military insurance was the only way to keep Sarah's treatments going. Helen barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sarah's brave smile, Sam's exhausted but determined face, and, most painfully, her own cruel words echoing in her mind. By morning, she was still in her hotel robe, her conference notes untouched. She continued reading about Sam's journey, discovering that his wife, Maria, had died due to complications during Sarah's birth. Despite his grief, Sam had stayed on active duty, creating a network of military families to help care for Sarah when he was deployed. One detail struck her the most. While stationed in Afghanistan, Sam had read bedtime stories to Sarah over video calls every single night, never missing a day, until the IED attack left him unconscious for 2 weeks. Helen's fingers hovered over her keyboard as she opened Boston Children's Hospital's donation page. She entered an amount, $50,000. It was a drop in the bucket compared to her wealth, but it meant something more than money. It was the first step toward making things right. But it wasn't enough. She called the conference organizers, apologizing for her absence, citing a family emergency. Then she picked up the phone again, this time calling the charitable foundation within her pharmaceutical company. "This is Helen Martinez from Meridian Pharmaceuticals," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. "I need to speak with Dr. Thompson about the Compassionate Care Program." Hours later, she sat in a hospital conference room with the program's directors. Her professional mask was in place, but her heart pounded. "Our foundation has the resources to support experimental treatments like Sarah Walker's," she explained. "What we need is to streamline the approval process. Every day we delay is another day these children suffer unnecessarily." Through the glass walls of the conference room, she glimpsed the children in the oncology ward. Some were playing, others were sleeping. All of them were fighting battles no child should have to endure. Somewhere in this hospital, Sam Walker was sitting beside his daughter's bed, probably still in his uniform from the day before. "Ms. Martinez," one of the directors said, leaning forward, "what you're proposing would require major policy changes." Helen straightened her spine, years of corporate negotiation experience kicking in. "Then let's change them. Today." As she spoke, she thought about how quickly she had judged Sam, How easily she had dismissed his pain, his sacrifice. Now, the least she could do was fight, just as hard for his daughter as he had fought for his country. By evening, she sat in the hospital cafeteria, surrounded by spreadsheets and policy documents. Her perfectly styled hair was now disheveled, her expensive suit wrinkled, but she hardly noticed. She was on a mission of her own now. Through the large windows, the city lights of Boston flickered in the night. And for the first time in a long time, Helen felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Helen sipped her coffee, her eyes scanning the families moving through the hospital cafeteria. Each face told its own story of hope, fear, and determination. A young nurse approached her table, offering a fresh cup of coffee. "You've been here all day," she said, setting the cup down. "You're the pharmaceutical rep working on the Walker case, right?" Helen looked up, surprised. "Yes, I am. Do you know them?" The nurse's expression softened. "Everyone here knows Sarah. She's our little warrior princess. Even on her worst days, she makes sure to smile at everyone. And her father." The nurse paused, shaking her head in admiration. "I've never seen anyone so devoted. He sleeps in that uncomfortable chair every night, still in his uniform most of the time because he comes straight from work." Helen's throat tightened. "His second job," she murmured. "Third. Actually," the nurse corrected. "He picks up security shifts at night when Sarah's sleeping. He says every dollar counts." Helen's coffee grew bitter in her mouth as she remembered her earlier accusations about special treatment and handouts. She pulled out her phone and opened the fundraising page again, seeing it was still far from reaching its goal. "Could you?" Helen hesitated, then continued. "Could you tell me what Sarah likes? What makes her happy?" The nurse's face lit up. "Oh, she loves princesses, especially Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She says Belle reads lots of books, just like her. And unicorns. Her room at home is full of them, according to her dad." Helen jotted down the information, an idea beginning to form. She had connections, not just in pharmaceuticals, but in corporate events and fundraising. She'd spent years building networks for her career. Now, it was time to use them for something that mattered. She pulled out her phone again and dialed a number she hadn't used in months. "James, it's Helen Martinez. Remember that favor you owe me? I need your help to organize a big event over the next few hours." Helen made call after call to event planners, local businesses, and her company's PR department, building a web of support for a charity gala. "I want it to be magical," she explained to her team. "Something a 6-year-old princess would dream about." For the next 2 weeks, Helen's life changed completely. Her Houston apartment became the nerve center for what she now called Operation Princess Sarah. She traded in her designer suits for casual clothes as she worked tirelessly, coordinating between Boston and Houston. She hadn't yet approached Sam. Every time she saw him in the hospital, still exhausted but smiling at the staff, she felt too ashamed to speak up. Instead, she channeled her energy into the event. The Boston Children's Hospital Grand Ballroom was secured. Local businesses donated services, florists promised arrangements that would transform the space into an enchanted garden, and a premier catering company offered their services at cost. Helen's big move came when she used her connection to a major entertainment company. "I want real Disney princesses there," she told the executive. "Especially Belle. And yes, I'll handle the liability insurance personally." Her reputation for being hard-nosed and demanding became an asset in a different way. When vendors hesitated, she didn't back down. When bureaucrats cited regulations, she found solutions. She was now fighting with the same determination she had once used to close sales deals. One afternoon, while overseeing decorations in the ballroom, Helen overheard 2 nurses talking outside Sarah's room. "Sarah's numbers aren't good today," one whispered. "Dr. Phillips had to adjust her treatment protocol again." "How's her father taking it?" "Still at her bedside," the other nurse responded. "He's reading Beauty and the Beast for the 100th time. Says it keeps her spirits up." Helen's hands trembled as she checked the fundraising page again. It was still $50,000 short of its goal. Without hesitation, she added $225,000 from her own accounts and sent urgent messages to her corporate contacts. That evening, she finally gathered the courage to walk past Sarah's room. Through the window, she saw Sam in his familiar position, still in his security guard uniform, reading from a worn storybook. Sarah lay in her bed, thin and pale, but smiling as her father did different voices for each character. The room was bare, with only the standard hospital furnishings. Within an hour, Helen had arranged for a team to transform the room overnight. They had to be quiet and follow strict hospital protocols, but by morning, Sarah's room would be a princess's chamber, complete with twinkling lights, removable wall murals, and a canopy over her bed. As Helen walked back to her hotel that night, she reflected on how different she felt from the woman who had boarded the plane 2 weeks ago. Her designer handbag now carried printouts of medical research alongside her makeup. and her phone's recent calls were filled with charity organizations instead of business contacts. The morning Sarah discovered her transformed room became legendary among the hospital staff. Helen, pretending to review charts at the nurse's station, heard Sarah's delighted gasp all the way down the hall. "Daddy, Daddy, look. It's just like Belle's castle." Sam's voice, thick with emotion, carried down the hallway. "It sure is, Princess. Looks like you had some fairy godmothers working overnight." Helen slipped away before she could be noticed, but the memory of Sarah's joy stayed with her all day as she continued preparing for the gala. The event was now only 3 days away, and the response had exceeded her wildest expectations. That afternoon, Helen received an unexpected call from her company's CEO. "Martinez," he said, "I've been hearing interesting things about your activities in Boston. Quite a departure from your usual approach." Helen straightened in her chair, ready to explain. "No need," he interrupted. "I've reviewed the proposal from our charitable foundation. The board has agreed to match all donations raised at your gala, dollar for dollar." For the first time in her career, Helen found herself speechless. "And Helen," he added, his voice softening, "my granddaughter survived childhood leukemia. What you're doing, it matters." After hanging up, Helen sat in her hotel room, surrounded by event planning documents and medical research papers, her heart full of purpose. Helen opened an old email on her phone, one she had received 5 years ago but never read. It was from her younger sister, Maria, asking for help with medical bills. Helen had ignored it, too focused on her career to deal with family issues. Maria had passed away 6 months later. As tears filled her eyes, Helen finally realized why she'd reacted so harshly to Sam on the plane. It wasn't about him. It was her own guilt, her shame at not helping when someone had needed her. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. It was James, her event coordinator. "Helen, we've got a situation," he said, his face anxious. "The hospital's PR department just got a call from a local news station. Someone leaked details about the gala. They're running a story tonight about the mysterious benefactor helping the Walker family." Helen's heart raced. She wasn't ready for Sam to know. She wasn't ready to face him and admit who she really was. "What should we do?" James asked. Helen took a deep breath, straightened up, and made a decision. "Get me in touch with the news station. It's time to stop hiding." The evening news segment aired at 6 o'clock. Helen watched herself on screen, sharing a carefully crafted version of how she had become involved with Sarah's case. She spoke about the foundation's matching grant, the upcoming gala, and the community's overwhelming support. She didn't mention the encounter on the plane. Soon after the broadcast, her phone rang off the hook. She ignored calls from colleagues and reporters, but one name made her freeze: Sam Walker. With trembling hands, she answered the call. "Hello," she said, her heart racing. "Ms. Martinez?" Sam's calm voice reached her. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. The nurses gave me your number." "No, not at all," Helen said, trying to steady her voice. "I just watched the news," he continued. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done." Sarah hasn't stopped talking about her room, and now the gala. Helen couldn't hold it in anymore. "Mr. Walker, Sam, there's something you need to know." She took a deep breath. "I was on your flight from Houston. I was the woman who—" "I know," Sam interrupted gently. "I recognized you the moment you came to the hospital." Helen was stunned. "You knew all this time?" "Yes, ma'am," Sam replied. "But why didn't you say anything after how horrible I was to you?" "Because," Sam said quietly, "I could see you were trying to make amends. My father used to say that actions speak louder than words. Your actions these past weeks have said everything." Tears filled Helen's eyes. "I was wrong, so wrong about everything. The things I said about you, about the military." Sam interrupted again. "Sarah wants to say something." There was a rustling, then a small, cheerful voice came on the line. "Hello, Daddy says you're my fairy godmother. Did you really make my room magical?" Helen laughed through her tears. "I had some help from other fairy godmothers, sweetie. Can you do more magic?" "The doctors say my medicine isn't working very good," Sarah said. Helen's heart tightened. "I promise, honey, I'm going to do everything I can to help you feel better. Are you excited about the party? Daddy says there might be real princesses there. Is Belle coming? She's my favorite." The night of the gala arrived, and the ballroom was transformed into an enchanted castle, with lights like falling stars and chandeliers casting warm golden light. Children from the oncology ward dressed as princes and princesses, their laughter filling the air. Sarah entered in a yellow, Belle-inspired gown, designed to accommodate her medical equipment. Despite her frailty, her eyes sparkled with joy as she took in the magical scene. Sam, dressed in his military uniform, walked beside her, holding her hand. Helen, wearing a simple blue gown, wanted all attention on the children. But Sarah spotted her immediately. "Fairy godmother," she called out, rushing over as quickly as she could. Before Helen could respond, Sarah was hugging her tightly. Thank you for making everything so beautiful. Helen knelt down to Sarah's level, being careful of her medical equipment. You, my dear, are the most beautiful princess here. The evening unfolded like a fairy tale. Disney princesses mingled with the children, but Belle spent extra time with Sarah, reading stories and singing songs. Corporate donors and local celebrities opened their hearts and their wallets as they witnessed the joy on the children's faces. During a quiet moment, Sam approached Helen at her table. "May I have this dance?" he asked formally, extending his hand. As they danced, Helen finally found the courage to speak about that day on the plane. "I've been carrying so much anger, so much guilt about my sister," she confessed. "I took it all out on you. I can never fully apologize enough." Sam's eyes showed understanding. "Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself," he said quietly. "But look around. Look at what your guilt transformed into. Every child here tonight feels like royalty. You did that." Helen smiled, changing the subject. "The fundraising total has exceeded our goal by almost double. With the company's matching grant, Sarah's treatment is fully covered. Plus, we now have a fund for other children in similar situations." Sam stopped dancing, his eyes glistening. "I don't know how to thank you." Helen smiled softly. "Just promise me one thing," she said. "When Sarah is better, bring her to my office in Houston. I have a job offer for the strongest princess I know, Chief Happiness Officer of our pediatric division." 1 year later, Helen stood in the lobby of Meridian Pharmaceuticals, nervously adjusting the banner that read "Welcome, Chief Happiness Officer." The past year had brought unimaginable changes. Sarah's treatment, funded by the gala's proceeds, had worked better than anyone hoped. Her cancer was in remission, and while she still needed monitoring, her doctors were optimistic. Helen, too, had changed. She had accepted a new position as director of the company's expanded compassionate care program, helping families navigate the world of medical coverage and experimental treatments. The program she created for Sarah was now helping hundreds of other children. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah bounded out, her hair back in cute pigtails, her cheeks rosy with health. She wore a t-shirt that read Princess Warrior and carried a stuffed unicorn. "Miss Helen," Sarah cried, running to hug her. "Look, no more tubes." Sam followed more slowly, looking relaxed in civilian clothes. He had retired from the military 6 months ago and now worked as a counselor for veteran families facing medical crises, using his own experiences to help others. "Ready for your first day as Chief Happiness Officer?" Helen asked Sarah, handing her a tiny nameplate for her desk. "Yes. Daddy says I get to help other kids who are sick, just like you helped me." Helen smiled as they walked toward the office, but Sam lingered behind, looking at Helen with an unreadable expression. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No," he said, smiling. "Just thinking about how life works. If you hadn't been angry enough to confront me on that plane, if I hadn't been stubborn enough to stay calm, if you hadn't been curious enough to look up that article, everything happens for a reason." Helen smiled. "That's what I've learned too. Sometimes, the greatest transformations come from our worst moments. And forgiveness, of both others and ourselves, can create miracles." Sarah's voice broke through Helen's thoughts. "Miss Helen, can we get a real unicorn for the next party?" Helen laughed. "Well, Chief Happiness Officer, let's start with the planning and see what magic we can make happen." Helen watched Sarah begin drawing plans for the next gala, reflecting on how one dark moment on an airplane had led to so much light. Her sister Maria, she thought, would have been proud of the person Helen had become. Sam caught her eye and smiled, his gaze understanding. They both knew that sometimes the greatest transformations come from the hardest times, and that forgiveness, both given and received, can change the world. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.